You're tuned in to the Restaurant Rockstars Podcast. Powerful ideas to rock your restaurant. Here's your host, Roger Bodwin.
Hey guys, thanks for joining me once again at the Restaurant Rockstars Podcast. You know, I'm really fortunate. I get to speak to some pretty dynamic people in the restaurant industry, and today's episode is no exception. I'm speaking with Mr. Robert Maynard, and he is the CEO of a 26-unit breakfast and lunch chain called Famous Toastery. Now, they've been hit pretty hard by the pandemic, just like all of us have, but their strategy has followed a shrink model in order to grow stronger in the future. So today we're going to be talking all about the challenges that they faced during the pandemic, how they've actually closed locations in order to open new ones in the future, their franchise model, why now might be a really good time for you to think about franchising, and all the ins and outs that come along with that. And it can be fairly complicated, but Robert sort of demystifies the process and tells us a bunch about, what their experiences have been, which is definitely food for thought, and also how you can reopen your stores and staffing up again after you've had to close, as well as, instilling consumer confidence back to your customer and using technology to increase safety, increase confidence, and convenience for the customer. We cover a lot of bases today, so stay with us, and I look forward to bringing you this episode. Thanks. Welcome back, everyone. This is the Restaurant Rockstars Podcast, and during COVID-19 especially, these are relevant topics that help restaurants rock their profits, build their brands, deliver amazing guest service experiences, and of course, keep their customers safe. With me today, Mr. Robert Maynard. He is the CEO of a company called Famous Toastery, and it's a 26-unit breakfast, lunch, and brunch franchise operation. Welcome to the show, Robert. How are you today?
Yeah, Roger, thank you. I'm fantastic. I can't complain.
Well, I'm really glad to hear you, to have you here on the show, because again, having 26 units in the operation, you're not a small company by any means. And obviously with the different stores and different locations, a lot of the challenges have been the same. Some of these challenges have been different. We're going to try and cover all that, the hiring, the firing. You are a franchise company. I also want to get into why you think it's a great idea to continue to offer that franchise opportunity. So why don't we begin? I always like to ask my guests about their backstory in hospitality and how they got into this business, how long you've been at it. Did you start off in high school working for a restaurant? Like, where did it all begin for you, Robert?
Well, it's an interesting question because I'm not your quintessential restaurant guy. So I worked in the restaurant business. I worked in bartending, waited some tables. It was never really a main thing for me. How this all started was a good friend of mine, Brian Burchell, who's now my partner in all this. He ran a lot of great restaurants in New York City, some popular ones over the years, and always wanted to do something together. I was in banking at the time and real estate development, and he said to me as he was living in Charlotte, hey, I'm going to open a restaurant. Can you help me? Can you invest with me? And I said, what you should say was absolutely not. I'm okay. I don't need to go down that road. So he was smart. He sent me a round trip ticket, a car to rent, and a place at the Marriott, the Fairfield Marriott. And 3 days later, we had an offer on an existing restaurant. So it took 72 hours to basically be in the restaurant business.
Awesome.
So it's really, I tell that story. Sometimes people are like, that true? I'm like, yeah, that was true. I mean, he sucked me right in, but it's a hell of an experience ever since.
I often say, be careful for what you wish for. It might come true, and it sounds like it did, but you've done a lot of great things since, and before the challenge hit, you built a thriving company, and we're going to get into where you're at now. But I love hearing that story because, this is an industry, I don't need to tell you this or the audience, but it is based on a true passion. And I'm sure that over the years, you've developed that passion, and now your company has grown, and you're sharing that passion with new potential operators. Of course, it is an opportunity still. only the strong will survive this thing. Obviously, we're trying to give people best practices advice on how to not just survive this, but how to come out the other side much stronger than they were before. So resilience comes into play here, and creativity and opportunity and having a vision. And you clearly have all those things. So we're going to get into that. But before we do, let me ask you, does your company have any company-owned stores, or are they all franchised? How does this work?
Yeah, we have a bunch of company stores, a bunch of franchise stores, mostly franchise. I think as we sit right now, 9 corporate stores, the rest franchise. And we actually have more stores opening. We opened up a store 2 weeks ago and a store last week. And we have another store opening in October. These are all brand new. So
unbelievable.
We see the upside, but we also have franchise locations and some stores opening on that side as well.
So when these stores were planning to open, was this all pre-COVID? Like all this happened like 6 months ago, and then all of a sudden, okay, it's too late to turn back. We're committed, and now we have a plan to somehow make it work during the most challenging time in restaurant history. Would you say that's true?
We had an interesting experience. So yeah, these were all pre-planned. I wouldn't be telling lots of brands to go out there and open a bunch of new stores right now, but we had them in play. And we were committed to them. And we truly believe that going forward will be more than okay. And I think we'll thrive. And you have to pick a side here, right? At the end of the day, restaurants are tough, right? You got a small window of opportunity to make these things work. And you also have very limited amounts of, you're freezing on my side. I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on here.
Oh, I'm freezing on your side?
Yeah.
You're
I got to see. Let me check to see because I actually hooked this thing up even to Ethernet too to make sure I wouldn't have any problems. And let me see.
Go.
Yeah. So opening a restaurant right now for all this is probably not the best decision one can make, but we were already down the road. We were committed to the projects. We loved where we were going. And the people wanted us there. And what we were surprised about was how busy everything was. And it was, I think that, it's what we all talk about in the restaurant business. I mean, everything about life is based on food and beverage. The people wanted that connection. And so many people came out to support us and come every day. And just the excitement of a new restaurant was huge. So what we noticed was it actually wasn't so bad opening up. And we're very excited about another one we're going to open up in October. So it's been a rough time, but you're also trying to find those little nuggets that make things make things really possible and exciting, and we did see that.
Now, I was on your website earlier, and I was checking it out, and first of all, I love your website. I think it's great, and it's very informative. It gives you especially the video gives you a really great sort of a feel for the restaurant and the experience that you're going to have before you enjoy the experience. But obviously that's shifted too. But these look like large operations. I mean, how many seats are in a typical Famous Toastery?
We try to get about 100, but we have a couple that have as low as 70. I think our lowest is 79.
I see.
We have some that are up to 150. We've changed that. We changed that before COVID. We've been trying to get smaller and smaller, just more intimate, being able to stand there and see the whole floor and see if there's anything going on. So we've been shrinking, but we do have some pretty large spots, which come in real handy Saturday, Sunday.
Right. When you have to distance people.
Yeah, and especially now, you're seeing a huge upside of having something big because you're not losing that many seats.
Right. That is definitely an advantage when you've got a smaller place and you can only distance people. I mean, restaurants are finding it super hard to survive that with limited seating and limited revenues and all of that. Right. Let me ask you, let's just go back to say March 1st forward. What did you anticipate and how did you react to the crisis when you first started seeing stuff hitting the fan? And where did you go and what were your first steps and how did you communicate this to all the stores and what really was your strategy?
Well, I was kind of, I wouldn't say ahead of it, but I was following this. I just follow international news a lot. So I kind of saw what was going on.
Yeah.
You saw what was going on in California. And we were bracing. We were already having daily meetings and saying, look, something's going down. This isn't going to be a one-stop shop and it's going to be over. Something's up. So we started just having meetings saying, what are we going to do? How are we going to deal with cleanliness? Let's look at what's going on in California. Let's look at what's going on in China. So then when it happened, we were a lot more prepared than I think we would have thought, because we were one of the first groups to come out and say, here's our plan of how we're keeping you safe. I would probably say the day we shut down, we were like, here's our plan, because we're already working on it.
Yeah.
Right? So that was a good thing. We had all the equipment, we had all that the hand stuff and the face stuff, and we were ready. But nobody was ready for what was to come after.
I know, right? Yeah. Did you close down at all at any period of time, or did you just stay open throughout and just shift the way the operation, worked?
Most stores stayed open.
They did.
There was only a couple. It really came down to staff, right?
Okay.
You can only staff so much, especially on the corporate side. And then had one franchisee that had a lot of issues health wise. So we did. You don't want to put people in you got to give everybody the choice. We didn't make anybody do anything, right? And more importantly, from a franchisee perspective, we didn't even charge royalties. We just forgave royalties for 10 weeks and then did half for a long time, which was tough, right? Because it was tough.
Wow.
We realized that it wasn't the norm.
Yes.
So we didn't want to be with the norm. I said, if I'm a franchisee, what do I expect from a franchisor? Because the motto we've had is you have to embrace the punch in the face, because this was not like just a bad week or bad day or a bad month. This was a 90% down for a significant amount of time, because we're in casual dining.
Yes.
So casual dining took especially breakfast. So we were in casual dining and breakfast. So that day part got pretty smashed. So we just, we did the best we could with what we had. We rolled out online ordering in 4 days. 4 days. It was unbelievable. All the going back and forth with everyone. And then, after this happened, it's like, boom, we'll make a decision. Yeah. It's rolled out, which was huge. We then also did all the DoorDash and whatnot, but we also started doing our own delivery, because we were starting to see that this is going to be a trend. We got to start getting in on our own delivery, what you consider first party delivery. Because eventually, when you start giving 5, 10, 20,000 to these guys,
right,
they've been a good backstop, so people can't get mad at them, right? They provided a service that worked, right place, right time. But you now need to use that coveted word that we all use these days. You got to start pivoting out of that a little bit, because you can't run a business that's already down a significant amount of money than giving away a lot of money.
Right. A lot of margins are lost, for sure. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you, in terms of the strategy for the franchisees and what the government requirements or, your state legislation that came down, I mean, did they immediately say you have to limit seating to so many? And was that cut in half? Did your revenues plunge significantly, and have they recovered? Where are you at with all that?
Well, there's a lot in that question.
I know. Yeah.
They were, I wouldn't say plunge. Plunge would be a nice word, right? The sales, they were oblivious. I mean, it was just, you went down 90% those first, when it first happened, because you went from dine-in to no dine-in, right? You only do takeout. We're not a takeout company. Who wants scrambled eggs or a, sunny, over easy egg to go? It's not the norm, but we do have a lot of other stuff. We have breakfast sandwiches and whatnot, which shifted a bit. But we had 50% occupancy when you first opened, but you just had to make do. It's like, again, we've been living by, everything doesn't happen for a reason, but those who survive for a reason, because you had to do things that you had to dig so deep. This pandemic and what has happened is not for the weak of heart. If you're in business right now and you're in the wrong business, this is a tough place to be. And you've got to dig. And then when you're done digging, you got to get the shovel again and dig a little more, because there's always a new challenge, right? You got the landlord challenge, you got the bank challenge, you got franchisees being frustrated challenge, and the list goes on and on. And then, of course, there's COVID, and then who's getting it, who's getting tested. It was almost like you are just taking shots from all avenues, and you had to just take a deep breath, write them all down, and take them as they come.
Seems to me you were in a coaching role with your franchisees in terms of, their leases and that sort of thing, and negotiating and how are we going to
Oh yeah.
survive this thing. And everyone was in somewhat of a similar boat. Some people are in a different boat. And it's like, okay, here's steps A, B, C, and D. And if you're going to make it, you've got to do all this. I mean, did you help these people strategize their next moves?
Sure, we were very, very clear on and feeding a lot of information about what's going on from a government perspective, what the seating is going to look like, what the social distancing is going to look like, what it's going to look like from the outside looking in, from the customer side,
Right.
and what's it going to look like from the inside out. Meaning, you creating a good, safe work environment, and they're wearing masks, they have gloves, because there's a lot of perception too. I mean, some people believe in it, some people don't believe in it. That's the point of debate was not to have as you're trying to survive. Whether you believed or you didn't believe in wearing a mask or what's going on, it didn't matter. You needed to get over it, get on board with what needs to happen so people can come in your restaurant and people can work in your restaurant. But I would say the biggest hurdle and the amount of time that's been spent the most has been with landlords. That has probably been the banks were good. People who had bank loans, or obviously SBA, paid for 6 months, which ends in October, which is going to be an interesting month for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But landlords there was nobody that was the same. Some landlords were great. Some landlords were okay. And some landlords were absolute dirtbags, right? It really ran the gamut. So you had I kind of look at it as the way my life was for a very long period of time, and even till today, was you put your mouthpiece in, you put your gloves on, and you go to war every day until you can get what you need. Because some people start to shift, and you're like, look, Mr. Landlord, we're down 35%. My rent factor now is 21%. Would you ever rent to me if my rent factor was going to be, my pro forma showed a 25% rent factor, are you going to rent to me? No, we need to work on this. But you have to be willing to keep digging, and you have to be willing to get in the weeds, and you have to be willing to say, maybe 1, 2, or 60 different curse words to get the deal done, because it got really intense. Because, look, they have problems too. You can't just say, oh, landlords are a bunch of whatever. I'm a landlord myself. I had to deal with it. So understanding all sides and being able to put all sides together was kind of the puzzle and the piece that it's not easy. It's definitely not easy. But we were able to step in for franchisees that it's not their wheelhouse, meaning they're not dealing with this stuff. It's not what they do. They're serving. They're taking care of their customers. They're taking care of their employees.
Yeah.
We had to be the Marines to go in and go to war with everyone. And a lot of it was okay. A lot of it worked out. Some of it didn't. Some people have been very tough, and they don't care if you're down 300%. Give me my money, right? So you have to work with that too.
And they obviously had to shrink their menu, shrink their staff to some extent, and all those things had to happen. So I called that street fighting. It's like what you just said about putting the gloves on. Every day is a new challenge. There's 100 details you have to deal with due to this pandemic. And it's like, okay, what are the priorities and what do we really have to do? And let's talk about profitability, because we certainly don't want to be selling things that aren't the most profitable items to sell. That's a whole menu engineering thing. I believe, and I don't want to speak for you, but it sounds to me like, your franchisees are locked into a certain menu to represent the brand. Is that not correct?
That's correct. And what we did is, we did limit the menu. So we made it for not just profitability, but also for execution. The idea between, call it March and today, or whatever, it was to survive. I mean, did you really think you're going to go and start banking hundreds of thousands of dollars? No. The idea is to survive and thrive, right? Put yourself in a position to get past it, get through it, be able to pay your bills, keep some key employees, and keep moving on. So not only did we minimize the menu, we also gave franchisees a little more latitude between what times they open, when they can close. Some places have people that were in office jobs, 10,000 office jobs around them, that now there's not one job around them. So they had different flows, right? So we had every store had a store. You couldn't be You couldn't be the hardcore franchisor that this is the way. You had to get into the weeds with every single person and find out what their needs were. Because if somebody was in a downtown location, there's no one in downtown right now, or any downtown. So you had to be more flexible. So everyone had their own need, and we had to be flexible with that need and be cognizant of that, even going into a meeting with a franchisee and with the franchisees in general. Because this was not anyone who took the role of I'm the franchisor, you do as I say. In 6 months or a year, the franchisees will remember. And this is about relationship. This is about creating value. And franchisees pay a royalty. They got to get something for that royalty. It's not about take, right? You've got to be providing a lot of support and not just in the obvious. And I think that's what gets lost in franchising, because franchising's hard. Restaurants are hard. But when you do them right and they work, they're amazing. That's usually where it comes down to.
Let's talk about communication with the customer in all the stores. And it's a twofold thing, because you want to obviously regain trust when consumer confidence was at an all-time low. You want people to come back into your units. You want people to trust that you're taking all the necessary precautions to keep them safe. You want your staff to know that you're doing everything you can to keep the staff safe. So you're balancing that part of the equation. And then you also want to get that repeat business so that they had a good experience. You want to get the online reviews going so that you're letting people know if there's anything that didn't meet your expectations, please let us know. And if you enjoyed your experience, please leave us an online review. We certainly appreciate that. So there's this marketing communication piece that's still such a big part of it. Do you have anything to add there, like some special things that your stores might be doing, or any success stories, in that communication piece with the customer that's all important right now?
That's a really good question. I think the communication was huge. Getting people to feel comfortable to come back in was big. So one of the things that we talked about when people walk in the stores, we basically told them what we were doing, physically told them what we were doing, which is different than just posting it on the signs, because everyone has a sign that's posted. We wanted everybody to feel comfortable. So we were saying, this is what we do. We wipe the doors down after someone goes to the bathroom. We wipe your whole table down. We ordered, to kind of go back to the rewind, we ordered paper menus like March 18th. We had paper menus. Now, it went to dine out only, right. But we were trying to make it so that you had contactless payment, contactless menu. We were doing this a long time ago, before it became the norm. Because all we kept talking about is how can we make people feel safer to come in once they were able to come in, right? Because that's the conversation that you see around is it safe to go to a restaurant? The problem is also from the political side. For a long time they were saying restaurants aren't safe. Well, I would say the second most safe place in America, next to a hospital, is a restaurant. Because the amount of stuff that we do, the amount of money we spend per restaurant to keep people safe or clean, what we do now is insane. So we're spending thousands of dollars more a month than we normally have. You get your gloves, but gloves are more, sanitizers more, spray is more, masks, etc. Right? So to answer your question directly, we were expressing that when people came to the tables. We were expressing that when people called on the phone. We were also to make an online order, and we had it all over social media. So did a lot of people, but we wanted to show it, like what people looked like, what it was going to look like when you walked in, that we were social distancing all the tables and the chairs and cleaning everything down. And I think that just came down to straight up execution, right? And you couldn't be worried, as crazy as it may sound, you couldn't be worried about your profitability. Again, you had to be worried about survival. Because there's no way anyone was going to be profitable when you're down 50%. It's just basic math. If the average restaurant in America does 5%, and you're amazing and you do 15, but you're down 35, it's you don't need you don't need a very big calculator for that one.
Damage control, I'd call it.
Well, it's damage control and also building confidence within the community, right? So, you find at one point, you found that there was some restaurants that were wearing masks, some were not, some that had gloves, some were not. Again, it didn't matter what one's beliefs were. politically, whether they liked it, whether they didn't like it, whatever. We had to be able to say how we would protect our employees, how do we protect the customer and the franchisees, period. And if it meant you're going to spend a little bit more money on more cleaning stuff, so be it. But that's what people remember tomorrow. Like, you got to plan today for tomorrow. You can't plan today for today. Because if you have just today's goals in mind, when this is a little bit past us, and I can't say the word over because who knows what that looks like, people will remember what you did. Franchisees will remember what you did. Customers will remember what you did. This is the time to think about tomorrow. You're going to wish you did today what you should have done today a year ago. This is the time that you have to think about tomorrow. So that's how we've approached everything. What is this going to look like? How do we have goodwill? How do we have great service? How do we tell the right story? Whether it's through social media, whether it's through in our store. It was, most people, they canceled marketing. We did not cancel marketing. We kept doing what we needed to do. We really ramped up PR. And it worked. It being in the wrong business technically, casual dining, breakfast, we've done very well. We're very happy where we are. We'd love to be at 100% capacity at every place, but we've been very lucky. But we also put the work in, and it was hard. And it was, people talk about they work from home. I mean, we've been working day and night since March. There is no Monday, Sunday, Tuesday, it doesn't matter what day it is. It's all the same day because it's a lot of planning, a lot of work.
I get the sense from just my research and in talking to and how you approach this business that service has always been paramount as an operating philosophy, something you pass on to your franchise stores, the importance of superior customer service. And you have a mantra or a tagline on your website, every server is your server. I mean, I love that. I totally, had that philosophy when I ran restaurants for years and years as well. Has that ramped up any since the pandemic has happened? And is there, during the time when you were just doing the takeout, before you could actually get people in the stores again, customers in the stores, did you have to do any other sort of special spin to make sure that every service experience was exemplary, just to make sure that that repeat business happened? And now things are going back to the way they used to be, to a limited extent, certainly, but where I'm going with that. I'm curious to hear about your training philosophies, your practices, your procedures, and what the training might be like on a day or weekly basis in the restaurants to make sure that we're touching every customer in a personal way, making friends, building relationships, as you said, because that's what this business is about. That is such a key component in running a super successful restaurant operation. The service is right at the top.
Well, execution is the name of the game. If you have okay food, but you execute like no other, people come. Right? If you treat them like gold, people come. If you thank them for being there, people come, right? You have to put that first. Every server, your server basically means everybody who's standing up in the restaurant works for everybody that's sitting down. Can I have some coffee? No, let me get your server. It doesn't work with us, right? It not only does that one component create a team effort, it self-mitigates. Like if you have 5 people working as a server and there's one that's not pulling their weight, you don't have to worry about the manager getting at them. If they're pulling their tips, they'll let you know, right? So it really helps mitigate, when you have people that are not at 100%. But a key question you asked is, how did it change when you went down to dine, take out? And the key thing that we push to everybody is to thank them, look them in the eye and thank them for their business, thank them for ordering. Because a lot of people were ordering to support local, and a lot of people ordering because they needed to eat and who they trusted. But a lot of people were freaked out to walk in anywhere that wasn't their own home, and you couldn't blame them with all the rhetoric that goes on in all these different channels of news. So it was connecting with every single person one by one. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for your business. We'll hope to see you again. And you look them in the eye. You tell them that's not just like here you go, have a nice day. You really had to connect. And you really had to, let them know we're there for you, and we see that you're there for us. You don't say that, but it's the tone, it's the looking somebody in the eye, and it's caring that they took the time to order from that restaurant. And I think that all makes the difference. It's all the little things that add up to the sum of something very large. And if you don't think that way, if it's all about me, how do I survive? Everything's terrible. My life's crazy. This sucks. That's what you get, right? You have to, even though some of that was true, you had to shift and how to remember why you're doing this. It's for the customer. Yes, you want to make money. Yes, you need to serve great food. You have to have great execution. But at the end of the day, if you don't have customers, nothing matters. And you had to let them know that not only did you care, but you had to find a different way to create every service your server. That's what makes us different, that our service is so good that when you just take out, how do you do that? And that was one of the ways we connected that.
Yeah, I'm really glad you clarified that because, when I ran these restaurants so many years ago, my mantra was every table is your table. And it was the very same philosophy where if you were a front of house person, you didn't have a section. It's like if you noticed someone dropped a fork on the floor or they needed something, if you happened to see that, we all backed each other up. And, nobody had a section at that point. It's like everyone jumped in to please the customer. They didn't have to wait for anything because we anticipated needs before we were asked. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about.
Tell me what person wants to hear, let me get your server. Let me get your waiter. Nobody wants to hear that. They're like, look, I'm eating my food. Get me some more coffee. Yeah. It's not their job to figure it out. So you have to figure it out for them. And that's how we came up with that, even that tagline.
Let's shift gears and talk about the franchise operation. Why do you believe this is a really great time to look into the Famous Toastery franchise opportunity?
Well, now more than ever, you've had no choice but to rethink everything you do. Everything from menu to what kind of person you want to hire, cross-training, smaller unit, then pushing into profitability and how you make that work and the right lease. We have something that works. We've been doing this, we didn't mention, since 2005, right? So we didn't expand until 2014. But we've been doing this a pretty long time. We know what works, we know what doesn't work. We've had all different types of real estate, we've had different types of franchisees, we've had great stores, good stores, bad stores, you've had it all, right? It's almost, you have no choice but to pass that on at this point. Like, we just know too much, right? And the system is so much more in lockstep. And through this system, through the COVID piece, you learn a lot about, you learn a lot about yourself, but you learn a lot about your business and your franchisees. And you're always talking about, hey, how can we do something better? And we have a whole list of things on a wall that says what we can do better. The thing is, we want to pass that on to people. Right? This is an interesting time. With the peak of this whole thing, 40 million people got let go and furloughed. So altogether about 40 million. Back in 2008, the most amount of people that lost their jobs, which still was a lot, was 10 million. So in the matter of 3 weeks, 40 million people got let go. It's pretty crazy. There's also now another 20-something million people looking for jobs, looking for the next career, looking for something to do.
Absolutely.
That's where we come in, right? We've never been a group that ever did lead generation. We never went out looking for franchisees. Now we're at a point where we want to start talking to more and more people because we have something really special to offer, right? It's not something we just started. It's kind of cool. Let's make a lot of money doing it. Franchising's tough. It's hard. So is running corporate stores. So we are in the weeds with everyone. So if we have a bunch of corporate stores, I know what it feels like when maybe you had a really, really bad day, or it was too busy, you didn't have enough staff, or no one came, there's always something in the restaurant business, right? We're side by side with franchisees. We're not just selling a franchise, we're also running stores. So we can test everything. We can do everything first. If we want to do new menu items, we put it out to all corporates. We want to try a new way of doing something. We don't go to the franchisees to do this. We say, we'll test it first. So we have some proof of concept with it. And, breakfast, lunch, brunch is a growing piece of the food industry. Right now, it's taken a bit of a hit, which we see as a big positive going forward. Because when things do open back up, this is the time of day that's going to boom. I mean, people aren't dropping their kids off for soccer. They're not having the meeting with the attorney. They're not doing a closing at our restaurant. They're not really doing anything in the morning. Eventually they will. And if you count out casual dining and these, like everyone's, pizza's killing it. Wings are killing it, and God bless them. You hope somebody can kill it right now, right? Eventually the tides turn and things will have some normalcy. And people, the main thing about what drives our business to be so good is it's 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. By 3:30, you're home. You're with the family. You're with your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your kids. A lot of people don't want to be working till 11, 12, 2 o'clock in the morning. And we solve that problem. We solve a lot of problems. We solve landlords' problems because we take up a lot of parking when most people are closed. We have a really, really, really good business model. It's something we have a lot of, one of the things that we do probably better than anybody is our food is made fresh that day for that day. We roast our own turkey. We do our own potatoes. We make our own corned beef hash. We have our own gluten-free pancake mix. We make all this stuff, right? It's made every day. So there's a lot going on with what we do, right? And we have a lot to offer, and we think that that's, something that we feel is a special thing that we've created that we'd like to share with others.
You already mentioned that obviously with, the upheaval in this industry, there's lots of good people on the street that are looking for a new opportunity. Maybe it's a chef that worked for someone else forever and they always wanted to put their name on the door, well, not their name on the door, but, put their own stamp on what they're doing and have a little bit more control. Maybe it's a really solid GM who's been in this his entire career, and he doesn't want to work for someone else. So what are the criteria that Famous Toastery looks for in a prospective new franchisee?
The first and foremost, it may sound a little cliche, is the passion to serve, right? But also to know that you don't just open a restaurant and it's successful by osmosis. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. So you got to be willing to put the time, the effort, and know that it's going to take time to really get going. What we've experienced in the past is people think that this is easy. Restaurants are hard, right? Not to say any business is easier, but restaurants got a lot of tentacles. There's a lot of things going on inside of a restaurant, a lot of things to manage, where, especially a concept that does an omelet in a pan every time it's ordered. We don't just put it on the flat top. It's a lot of work that goes into it. We want them to understand what that looks like. So now what we do is before people even sign a franchise agreement, we have them work in the kitchen on a Saturday and a Sunday at a busy place, because that's the proof of the pudding. That's what you see. That's when you have an hour wait, a full kitchen, and craziness, right? And that's what we want. We want people to experience it before they actually experienced it. And we go through pretty big lengths to do that. We don't sell these, right? We always tell people, we tell everybody it's a risky business. Odds are low. You can always do something else. Why do you want to do it? Like, really, tell us why you want to do it, because, we do it every day. We know what it's going to take, right? This is assuming someone doesn't have an enormous amount of restaurant experience. Someone that has a lot of restaurant experience, depending upon where they were, did they pay bills? Did they ever have their own money in? Life is very different when payroll is due and you're short $500. You don't just tell the boss, because you're now the boss, right? So it's educating what it's all going to look like, right? And being very upfront with, being your own boss, running your own business also comes with the other side of it, which is an enormous amount of responsibility to the patrons, to your staff, to yourself, to your family. It's not for the weak of heart. Doing any business is not easy. Whenever you're not getting a guaranteed something, there's a lot more stress, a lot more risk, and that's the way some people like to live. I wouldn't do anything different. I even COVID, right? Because you had no choice. If you were smart enough to say, okay, what can I learn from this? You really start to see some people are built for certain things, some people are not, right? This is the time to start a business. This is the time to find second-gen space. The guy was paying $45 a square foot. Now you can get for $22 a square foot, or I say $29 a square foot. Things have changed. This is the time, right? This is the time to do stuff.
Well, you've got the attention and the intrigue of our audience, Robert. Can you tell us how we can explore your franchise opportunity further? Is there a specific URL, or is there a button on your website right now that if you're interested in this franchise, what the opportunities are so they can explore it further?
Sure. I mean, you go to famoustoastery.com or ownatoastery.com, and it will give you some basic information on that. And also just filling out a form. It will tell you, will prompt you to fill out a form, and somebody will get back to you and talk about what that potential looks like.
Well, that's fantastic. Robert, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast today. We covered all the ins and outs of what your company has done during the COVID, the best practices that you've followed, all the challenges and the pitfalls that you and your stores have come across and how you've overcome them. And then we've also talked about an opportunity for the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate your time and what you do as well.
Well, audience, check out famoustoastery.com. Get some more information if you're interested. That was another episode of the Restaurant Rockstars Podcast, and we will see you in the next one. Thanks for tuning in.
Guys, I told you that was going to be a dynamic episode. And of course, Robert Maynard brought us a lot of nuggets of information. What it's like to be the CEO of a fast-growing, fast-moving enterprise, and the lessons that we can apply to our own operation, whether it's a single unit, whether it is a franchise, or whether we've got 3 to 5 locations that are independent. We learned a lot today, so thanks for tuning in. It's all about systems. I say that all the time, but it really is. The key to your future, the key to dialing in your operation and giving you peace of mind and training your staff to have your back and to dial in your critical numbers so that you understand your profits on a day-to-day basis and your daily break-even. All those things are super important, as well as marketing and affinity. We've got all of those turnkey systems available at restaurantrockstars.com. So head on over and check it out. We really appreciate you listening. Please leave us a review on iTunes, and we'll see you in the next episode. See you next time.
You're tuned in to the Restaurant Rockstars Podcast. Powerful ideas to rock your restaurant. Here's your host, Roger Bodwin.